and challenges. Hi, Kenny. Uh, Issues and challenges in today's fire service. I'm Chief Rick Lasky, and we're hanging out with some great friends today. And we'll be visiting our topic. Our topic is going to focus and center around the fire service and law enforcement, the same mission, one family. And our guests, our Chief Kenny Gabriel from the Coeur d'Alene, Idaho Fire Department, my good friend, who we used to work together. Miss him tremendously. Coeur d'Alene, sadly, and we'll visit us a little bit later. Coeur d'Alene recently suffered a line of duty death of very good police officer, Sergeant Greg Moore. Had some other things going on before that, and they've got a great relationship with their PD. Our other great guest, our good friend, is Assistant Chief Terry McGrath from the Louisville Fire Department in Texas. Terry was former Dallas police officer. His brother's an officer there as well, and Terry's still a peace officer as well as doing the fire department through arson. And then we've got, well, I guess it's, let me see, it still is Chief Joe Florentino from Little Elm, Texas, who was recently just promoted to, let me see, Joey, it's public safety director, but it's assistant town manager. Is that right?
That's correct.
All right, I got that right. Joe's been in law enforcement forever as well, originally from New York. Has been out in Texas for a long time doing great things. But everybody, everything's going great. And welcome, guys. Welcome. How's everybody doing?
Doing great.
Kenny, do we got you? Let's hear you, Kenny.
How you doing? Good to see you.
It's good to see you, buddy. It's just, and I figured, you know, with all the stuff going on with the media, with the public, with law enforcement, I know we've got several different departments just with us on the air today. For our listeners out there, I'll do some bragging on all four of us and the departments we've worked with. Is the relationship we have with our law enforcement families has been incredible. And I know not everybody has that, but there's some people on today that can kind of help, I think, some of us out there get to a point where you know, we can get to those relationships a little bit better. But hey, Kenny, and I just want to go to you pretty quick here. How and I know it's a horrible thing to go through, and you even said it when we talked when it first happened, to be able to put a face, even so, a face with the name. First of all, how are your guys doing? Those that had to handle the call, because I know that was horrible, obviously, but a lot of stress and a lot of. Are they doing okay?
You know, they are now, Chief. It was a pretty difficult deal because, like we talked on the phone, and I think the other chiefs will agree, we worked pretty hard to become one with the police department. And like you said earlier, we've had 3 officers shot in the line of duty in the last 15 years, and that's why I moved 3 too many. But it was pretty tough for our folks, and you said it very well. When you put a face to the name, it really made a big difference with our guys. But the beauty of what got us through, we were not PD were supporting us as we were trying to support them, so they're doing much better now. How's
things? You're a little tinty. I don't know if with the mic or not, but that being said, how's I see that the tweets from the police department, and I know they still have a job to do, but you know, I mean, they never forget. But are they doing a little bit better over there? I mean.
Yeah, you know they are. It's, sometimes in tragedies like this, things get a little better in the community. And you said it very well earlier that our PD folks, they've been really taking a pretty bad rap lately for stuff that they have nothing to do with. And there's been an enormous amount of community support that's rallied around them, and that has made their healing process significantly better.
Well, and it's just it's just hard, and like I said, our hearts go out to. And I want to get back to a little bit later because of I know the relationship that you have forged there, which actually started. Chief Dave Skates, our good friend that was there forever, did a great job making sure that we got along, and I got along so well with the police chief there. If you remember it, they would separate us at staff meetings because they didn't want to sit next to it because we had such a good time together. And they put a sign on 2 different chairs like across the room, and Dave would come in and throw the paper on the floor with the sign, and we'd still sit next to each other. But
you get in trouble in a staff meeting, isn't it? But yeah, we have the passion. That's something you started, so.
Oh, very cool. Well, Joe, hey Joe, tell us. Joe, Chief, tell us about the transition you're going to be making over and what that's going to take, buddy. I mean, I know you've been intimately involved in a lot of things there, but that's a big change coming up for Little Elm as a whole.
It is a big change, but I think we have a pretty good marriage here between the police and the fire department, so I don't think it's going to be that big of a challenge to get over. The biggest thing is for me leaving, not being the fire chief anymore. So it'll be 10 years this fall, so that's the rough part. But I'm looking forward to the challenge. I think it's essential, especially in a town of our size, which we're about 30,000 people now. Well, we're over that, probably 35 now. And the rapid growth, I think it's important that police and fire have a good relationship, and even though things in Texas are good economy-wise, you still got to be, wise with the money that we spend. And I think public safety here, we've proven that we've worked together for many years to make it happen. So looking forward to the challenges, and it's a little bit exciting and it's a little bit nerve-wracking.
Well, you said it. I know you've been. I mean, you've been in the fire service, pretty much. I always say your whole life, but law enforcement just as long. And I've always said we have the same mission, just two different avenues to get there. I spent some time in law enforcement while I was a firefighter. I always tell people, I joked, I was very excited when I did it. I loved doing it. I tell a lot of other folks, I kind of sucked at being a cop. I got shot, stabbed, and burned my first year as a police officer, and anyway, that was that's how bad I got sucked so bad I got shot through the windows of the police station. So that shows you how that went. But Joe, like I said, I'm excited for you because I'm excited for both. I know what it's like to be on both sides of the fence, law enforcement and on the fire side, and to have a good boss above you that gets it. And we've talked about that is pretty cool. So congratulations on that, pal.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Hey Terry, you've been doing this a long time. Your brother's still in Dallas, right?
Yes, sir.
I mean, you've been seeing everything on television. You've been watching. You've been following. Obviously, I was bragging on the relationship Louisville has with their law enforcement family, and you're still intimately involved with that, still being a peace officer as well. But I just don't. I don't know. Do you see this kind of going away eventually, or getting worse, or whatever? Because no matter what they do, even when they do things right, it's just so easy right now to go after them. And like I said when we were off air, we just had a school teacher get charged down here for, I know you're innocent until proven guilty, but I don't think that's the case here. But with some child pornography stuff, we've got plumbers, electricians, everybody that has their bad folks in there. But there's a ton of great law enforcement folks. I don't know what. I mean, do you see it curtailing or getting worse, or what's your feelings on all that?
Well, I think there's a lot of challenges that certainly law enforcement, and I think the modern, the media and the access to cameras and being able to record everything. I think that on the law enforcement side of things, I think we've got to get to a point where we embrace the technology, and you got to use it for your advantage, just like it can be used, I guess, against you. But that being said, and Chief, you probably didn't know this. Nikki and I had gotten married, so I'm married to a police officer.
Oh, yeah.
My brother's a police officer, so I have the kind of the fire versus police every day at my house, where I have to consistently remind her that we are the America's heroes, and as a general rule, nobody likes her. But all kidding aside, I think that with the development of anything, there's going to be a lot of change. Change is difficult. Change in the fire service, police service is very difficult, and I think it's not realistic to push back against it. I think you got to figure out ways to make it all work. And one of the things like we're doing here, using some of this technology as an ability to get a lot of interesting messages out to a lot of people and do it for free. the use of social media for the good, and I pretty much manage our Twitter account here, and I think you got to use those things too, because you have to market yourself. That was something that you were very active in, and I believe that more than anything, police and fire need to market your department. And you know what? You didn't used to have to do that stuff. I think now you do, and I think every department would be wise to figure out the best ways to do it.
Well, and one of the things you mentioned, and she's with Arlington, Texas, which is a
Right.
pretty big police department, right? I mean, obviously
Right.
they got the
Right.
Cowboys there, the Rangers, Six Flags, a bunch of stuff. I follow them on Twitter and Facebook. They're very proactive. They're very good about. I mean, they went through. Correct me if I'm wrong. Line of duty with an officer that she was at a domestic disturbance or whatever, and I think there was a little failure there in checking up on her and stuff like that on dispatching, if I remember right. But they've suffered a tragedy or tragedies there as well. But they do a very good job, I think, marketing and getting out there and staying positive, staying in the public's view, if you will, with positive stuff. And that's got to be helping there.
Well, and it's interesting you bring them up, because when I started following them, they're the ones that I really kind of latched onto, and they've won a lot of national awards. They're very recognized in this area. They have a very active media department, but they do, and the other thing is that they have fun with it. They use it for very serious purposes. I mean, it's very handy to use and to dive into this area when you need to get messages out to the media and things like that. But you know what? They're okay with laughing at themselves. They're okay with having a good time, and that's the part of it where I feel like all departments, and police departments in particular, you need to recognize everybody's human. You need to recognize that it's okay to smile and have fun, and it's certainly okay for the public to see that. So, and I think Arlington's done a phenomenal job with that. We try to do that here within the fire department, and we banter a little bit back and forth. I have a lot of fun with Denton, which is the larger city up north of us. But we have a lot of fun going back and forth. We do the donut jokes, and they do the hose dragger jokes, and those sort of things. But you know what? You get, because you see the feedback you get from the responses from the public. I think that stuff's good, and that's the part of it where I feel like, with all the challenges we have against us, all the negative things that come down the pipe, you need to jump at the opportunity to get out there and let the public see you in a favorable way, and actually, enjoy some interaction with you.
Well, and I think you have something, Kenny. You guys are very proactive. Joe, you are in social media with promoting your city and your departments. I don't think it's new. Lately, everybody seems to be posting great stories, but great stuff. You see police officers stopping to play basketball, or with kids, or they're stopping to play catch, or they're the lemonade stand thing and all that. That's not new. They've been doing that for a long time. It's not new. It's just now I'm glad people are finally posting that stuff, because they can do that. Kenny, you guys, all the years with, let me see if I can be politically correct and nice here, because I don't want to violate anybody's constitutional rights, but you had a nasty group there that used to march in the All-American City in Coeur d'Alene, the Aryan Nation, and you talk about I don't know, 100 law enforcement, all those law enforcement agencies, FBI, everybody coming together and working together. We used to feed the cops. We used to feed the cops feed the police officers at our firehouses, so they could get away from people staring at them and everything. So, that was huge back then, Kenny.
It was. That's something that we carried on, Chief. But we do that a lot now. In all the events we do together, you talked earlier about Coeur d'Alene being a resort community. And in our park downtown, what we do is we build a shared police and fire command post that we use for all our big events. We actually have a big event every weekend in Coeur d'Alene. So, for instance, Ironman comes to town. That is, 30,000 people in town. The command post for police and fire is saying, but they all know that when they need their stuff, and the stuff that's important is food, of course, we take care of all that. And that's a tradition that we started back at that big event we were at. Local, regional, and national law enforcement there, and it's just there. It's just great to have that relationship that we're just growing every day.
Well, and like I said, you and I thought about that back when we were together. Was just, not that they didn't have a place, a tent for the law enforcement agents, officers to take a break, but it was a big deal during that to be able to go somewhere and sit and eat and not be bothered. And we fed them and took care of most of them. That can make it over there. That was a big deal to get that done. And I guess Joe, my question for Joe is, Joey, when you came from New York State down to Texas, what was there any difference? I mean, things would. I mean, up there, I've seen it where there's departments like anywhere that get along with law enforcement, and sometimes there's those that don't. But when you came down there, was there any difficulties making that happen, or did it kind of flow nicely?
Yeah, there was some difficulties. Where I come from, Long Island, mostly volunteer fire departments, large county police departments, and the police was so spread out that when they changed shifts, they would not go back to the precinct. They would come to and park their cars at the volunteer fire station and do the shift change. So it really lent to getting to know the officers on your beat, and I was used to that. We knew them. They came to all the parties and retirements and all that kind of stuff, just part of it. When I came down here, a little bit different. I started with another department here across the lake, I guess back in 1995, and a very strained relationship between the police and the fire. We, at that time, were all volunteer. Police was all career, and there was no connections. Not sure how that happened prior till I got there, but it took some understanding and getting to know everybody's roles. But that certainly was a transition from coming from the Northeast.
Well, and you said it. I mean, I remember, we used to talk about some of the difficulties, and it was just when somebody comes in on either side with that bent view towards the other, we're always kind of jealous of each other. That's a nice competitive thing, if you will. I mean, in a roundabout way, a lot of guys, but I know what you're talking about that particular situation, and I think the fire department was doing everything they could. I don't think it was the patrol officers as much as it was the boss, right?
No, and I don't think so. And I think even when you read these other articles about strains, I don't think it's rarely the rank and file. I think most of the time it's the management and the tolerance that management has for that type of behavior at the lower ranks. And it was one thing when I had such a bad experience in the other place that when I came here 10 years ago, I got with the police chief and I said, we don't have to like each other, but our agencies are going to work together and we're going to work in the benefit of the town. Fortunately, I had a great police chief here. Waylon Rose just retired. We had a great 10-year relationship, became very good friends, and we would not tolerate anything between the rank and file, and subsequent, our agencies has got along great. So, have there been difficulties? Sure, but we certainly don't deal with those on scene, and those need to be dealt afterwards. And normally it comes down to understanding what is each other's role. It's complex. Even though we're all here for the public safety aspect, it's still in some respects apples and oranges on what we have to do on scene. Firefighters don't see everything that police do, and police don't see everything that firefighters do.
Well, and Terry, you remember Gordon Graham came to town, and we all like Gordon, and he's a pretty incredible guy. One of the things he posted a while back was, it was tell the police officers, stop arresting firefighters. And it was one of those where you saw all the time that they shut down a lane on a highway. That's what it usually was about. I never really saw, or very few, where it was at a EMS incident at a house or a structure fire as much as it was an accident where they got in a dispute over shutting lanes down. And I think I know in Louisville, I don't know if you still do it, but there was a time where we went back and forth and trained each other. I don't know if you want to talk about that at all. We'd go meet at muster and explain some things. Some of the topics. You want to talk about some of the things you guys would explain to PD, and they would come over and explain to your guys?
Yeah, so, currently, as we speak, we're going through a large active shooter kind of a shift in the paradigm where we're now, the PD's response to active shooter, obviously we're not waiting and setting up a perimeter, letting a tactical team come in and deal with this, and now they're on a kind of a, the initial officers have to be aggressive and go in there and try to isolate, but so we're changing our response as well, and so in order to do that, we have to train our entire fire department, and we have to train every single member of their department. So that's one of the things. We work 3 times a week. We're out at a school for about 5 hours, working on the mechanics of it, but we have to get every single person through it. And it's been a very positive experience because this is a chance to get around maybe some officers you don't see every now and then, but it's also an opportunity for those groups to actually see how we work. Everybody knows how it works at a major accident, and but as far as they have to provide protection while our guys are packaging a patient quickly or something like that. So the whole dynamic all day long, and it allows for obviously some camaraderie, but it really gives our guys a chance to see what they have to do. It gives them a chance to see what we have to do, and I think that in getting back to us going to police briefings, I think that's where it starts. First of all, you have to be able to communicate. That's from the top down. And you can't get frustrated at a patrol officer for parking his car in front of a fire. He's there and wants to help, but if you go and educate him as to why that's a problem, so we still face that issue every now and then, but for the most part, we've gotten some real good response when we go to them with an issue like that. But again, there has to be an open dialogue. There has to be the freedom and the ability for both organizations to approach the other organization, leave your feelings on the curb, and let's work for the betterment of everybody. And I think that's important. So we try to work. If we have some type of major change in our operations, they're included when we roll that out, so that they understand what we're doing, and likewise they keep us in the loop with what they're doing as well.
Well, and I remember a couple times where the issue, Joe, you've been there, Kenny, you've been there, where maybe in their enthusiasm, their passion when they get to a fire scene, maybe to make a difference and help, if they get there ahead of time. Both police officers and firefighters have that inner deal that we want to help people, we want to be there for people and take care of their stuff, and sometimes they might park in the wrong spot or whatever, and I found after a while, Terry, after we talked to them, you really had to you really had to say anything, because there was a sergeant or a supervisor that got there and would come over to us and go, hey, I already talked to Officer so-and-so, he didn't see it, or whatever, that people were yelling, get in here, and it got caught up in the moment, and it took care of itself, if you would, on that. You know what, I'm going to kind of do that squirrel thing here. Terry, before we move on and continue with our talk here with Joey and Kenny, Chief Tim Tittle is a good friend of all of ours, and a great guy, and was my partner for almost 12 years there. I always post his picture in my Pride and Ownership program and say he's the definition of loyalty. And shortly after he took over as fire chief there, he was hit with leukemia and kicked its ass, and came back and was in great shape, and he's back in with another bout of it, but I told him before he went in he's going to whoop it again. I asked you before we went on the air, and you said he's doing great.
He is he's really good spirits, which is always good to see, and so he's undergoing an additional round of treatment. The doctors are optimistic. He was, it goes without saying he was terrified at the news, but he's, like I said, he's a tremendous human being. He's one of the nicest guys that you'll ever meet, and I think we throw those words around a lot, but I think, Chief, you know him, and Chief Florentino knows him, and anybody would agree. So, but he's got a great support network, great family, extended family. He's got firefighters in his family, and so he's got a lot of support behind him, and we're obviously, wishing him the best, pulling for him every day. We sent him the link. I hope he's watching or listening, and get well soon, and we got the seat warm here, and we're waiting for you to get back.
Well, and I appreciate you, Sam. We just want to throw a shout out to him if Tim was listening, because I love him, and a great family man, great firefighter, and a ton of years out there doing great things. So that was a very justified squirrel moment, if you will. But Kenny, we went through a big change in Coeur d'Alene, you and I together, and especially after I left, we had I guess for a while, I don't know if it still is a very active area, if you will, for the whole meth lab thing. And it's been some time now, but the commander in charge of that task force leader, you remember? Yeah, I remember you making a primary search of the second floor because we were missing an occupant. I had fire blowing out the front window. We had just hit it from the outside. You're up there's pretty much zero visibility, and you end up with a gun pointed at you in the smoke, which I know made your Sector C pucker up. There was some tremendous, as bad as that incident was, and ended up that the task force, for the law enforcement, the state troopers were in there with their little mini air packs on. There was a lot of confusion, but as a result of that bad incident, I think things totally flipped over, didn't it?
You know, they did. We heard from Senator Air Chiefs about education and how that's changed in their worlds. And Chief, that's something that happened when you do get the 9mm right in your face. It kind of makes your day a little different. And from that, we changed all our policies completely. As a matter of fact, that task force leader you just talked about went out to be the police chief. And for Lane, I believe, Chief, he came to Louisville, so your folks too. Did he not about what we're doing up here?
I couldn't hear the last part, Kenny.
Yeah, Wayne Longo actually went to Louisville and taught some classes for you guys, didn't he?
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, Terry, you remember we brought Wayne Longo down from the Idaho State Police, and then he became your police chief, right? And he did a great job for us down here, yeah.
Yep.
And
what Terry said was kind of starting to learn each other more, Chief, and what we did is we kind of tried to figure out what they can do for us and what we can do for them. And they talked about the active shooter. We've taken that one step further, and now we actually have 4 tactical medics from our department that are actually members of the SWAT team. And they talked about the camaraderie, talked about a monumental quantum shift and how PD looks at us because now they know literally we have their backs. And just understanding what the needs were made a big difference. And, you know, the meth labs were a big part of that because unfortunately, you're right, we did have a lot of them. But we made changes that were kind of changed throughout the country as well.
Well, and that was the whole thing back then, is they wouldn't tell us where they were going till the last minute. We needed an engine ambulance come stand by because they were worried. I'm like, so that broke down those walls where they would come and brief us, we'd send you, the engine would go to the briefing and get that done. And I think that probably made things a lot easier as a whole when it came to hosting, I mean, every weekend, like you said, but the Ironman contest, which was huge. We had the Coeur d'Alene, the riots, I mean, over a traffic stop that went to hell in a handcart. And, we ended up training, with them, setting cars on fire, backing down with an engine with their protection, deck gunning from a safe distance, pulling away, doing those quick hits with tank water to slow things down and working with them. And it took, sadly, but I always, if you know me, when we always talk about what 9/11 did to us and what 9/11 did for us, that was, you and I were both really pissed off. I know nobody wants to have a gun pointed at their head. When you said you're searching, all of a sudden you come across somebody, you go, someone says, "Who the F are you?" And you're like, "Who the F are you?" through your mask, and I can't get you on the radio. And anyway, and then Chief Welch is inside. He's like, "Where did they come from?" And we had a mayday. The mayday wasn't actually a mayday. It was the bad guy who was down unconscious, but we heard the bells going off with the 10-minute packs from the police. It just was a big mess, and something that could have really went horribly wrong.
Yeah,
something good came.
Wanting to make things better too, and that's what happened. So that was the case, and you were a big part of that. So yeah, we looked at what we did wrong and figured out what we're going to do right.
Well, and that worked out. That was incredible because it's just, it flipped things upside down, if you will, in a good way to get us all working together. We talked about social media and getting out there. Terry, you talked about, Joey and Kenny, about marketing, getting out there, and I guess to our viewers, whether you're watching this now or later on after it's recorded, if you go to Coeur d'Alene, go to the police or fire's website, go to their Facebook, go to their Twitter accounts. I follow them. Same thing with Little Elm, Texas. Same thing with Louisville, Texas. And Terry mentioned we'll brag on Arlington because I follow them. I've got my favorites on the fire department side and on the law enforcement side. People I like to follow, I think, are very proactive when it comes to that. And now I guess the question would be, and I'll throw this to Joe first. Now that you're the public safety director, for those out there that were in the situation you were when you first came down 10 years ago, Joey, where you have someone on either side, let's just paint it on either side, usually a boss. It's usually a boss because good leadership will take care of the other stuff. You know, good, like you said, you know, before you said, Terry, you said it, and Kenny, you know, we're not going to let that stuff happen anymore, and we're going to get along. We're going to make it happen. But Joe, I guess I'd ask you first, what do you do when you've got a numbskull on either side that just won't? You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, what would you tell if somebody came and said, Chief Florentino, this guy's never going to change. How do I keep the guys from getting in arguments? Or what advice would you give someone if you got someone at the leadership side on the other fence, on the other side of the fence, that's not doing their job?
Yeah.
You've been there.
Yeah, I've been there. So I certainly don't. You have to keep trying. There's no doubt about that. You have to keep the understanding. You have to keep the open dialogue, and you have to do the, you know, what I call kill 'em with kindness. Okay, you've got to take the high road on the situation. But I'll be honest with you, in the other city, you know, you come to an impasse at some point. You still got to make sure that everything's functioning and working and everyone's doing their roles. But it's just, if you're not going to get over, especially the top person, in convincing and creating the culture that you need to have that transcends down to the rank and file, at some point you just have to do the best you can to make sure you're still delivering the service at 100%. So you got to continue to take the high road. That's
well, and Pete is monitoring us. To our viewers, if you have any questions, make sure you know, tweet them. We gave you the information, but to fire engineering, if you can't get to that for some reason, which I don't know why you couldn't, hit one of us. But make sure you put it, you know, and it somewhere, put in there hashtag FE Talk, Frank Edwards. So FE Talk. But our good friend, guys, Doug and Marnie Price are firefighters, a firefighting family. You know, when we talk about North and South Carolina being part of our big families here, he just tweeted that they're getting ready at where they're at to do a school shooting with, you know, both at the high school and bringing everybody together and so on and so forth. You know, when it comes to getting everybody to work together and so on and so forth. You know, it's a school drill is what he meant to say, not a shooting. Wrong word on mine. And sorry, guys. But they're actually coming together there in a positive direction to make things happen. Terry, you guys have done a ton of PSAs. You know, Joey said stay at it, but you've done a ton of PSAs, which I've had actually people say, is it really like that Louisville where the law enforcement and PD get together, because we see both of them on television at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never turn down an opportunity to incorporate, you know, the police department or their message in with us. I mean, if we're out there to talk to people about public safety, you know, contrary to what some people think, the police department's in public safety as well, and they're not necessarily, you know, their main job in life is not to go out and put people in jail. They're trying to make a neighborhood or a community a better place to be. So I'll never turn down the opportunity to work with them. And you know, I think you know, Chief Florentino makes a great point, and that is, you know, kill people with kindness and take the high road. And you know, I've learned that maybe the hard way throughout my careers, because you have a lot of pride and you're quick to maybe render a judgment about another organization, another group of people, and maybe guess as to why or what motivates them or why they did what they did. But you know, the end result is we're all here to work together. It's not us versus them. And you know, I think that the education component of this is huge. And sometimes we have to educate police officers, and police officers have to educate us. We have to make sure that our guys are open to that and understand that's a priority here. And so it's important to go at this with a collective mindset and not show up every day ready to battle the people across the parking lot. Because I think that, and I've kind of come to understand this, if you have people that have a contentious relationship with the police department, I'm curious to know what their relationship's going to be with the public. Because, you know, we should be on the same team and we should be working together. And if they can't overcome some differences to kind of meet some common ground, that to me is maybe a red flag of an individual, especially if it's a company officer, and if it's going on below the ranks of that company officer needs to realize that and needs to be working on that. So I think that's a perfect place to start.
That's a great point. I love that. One of the things that, and Kenny, you've worked for some great city managers. Joey, Joe, our former city manager before Donna Barron took over, but Claude King, Terry, used to drive me insane when he would say, I'd go there to defend the guys, and I'd say, look, boss, it was just this one thing, and he would say, what else are they doing wrong? I use this example in class a lot. Or what else are they forgetting? And Terry, you made a great point. If they're doing that, if they're doing that kind of stuff with the relationship with either fire or with police, either side, what are they doing when it comes to the public and they're facing bad times? That's a great message. It's a great idea. Kenny, we talked about this a long time ago about not letting one incident, and that was the case there. That would have been very easy to turn what was very productive into a very negative situation with Wayne and the group back at that incident. But there's a lot of folks out there that let one incident paint the whole picture. You can't paint the whole thing with a broad brush, right? And you can't let one incident tarnish that reputation, that relationship.
Well, you can't. We have to make a decision right then is how are we going to do this, because either us or law enforcement, that incident felt good about what happened in the end. So, that just talks about the collective. But, again, I go back to Terry's got some very good words we've been listening to, and, the education's the key. But, Chief, can we talk for a second about the general obligation bonds we've had here for the last 10 years?
Oh, sure.
What we did is we just passed one in May, and then 10 years before, we identified the needs in the fire department and the needs in the police department, and have gone to the public with 2 public safety bonds where police and fire are hand in hand, and they both passed successfully. Well, we talked about a lot of components of that being social media, PR, being out there, but I think what's helped in Coeur d'Alene quite a bit is that they know that we work hand in hand together. And you talked about city managers. Well, it starts with us as chiefs setting a culture where we are going to get along with our public safety partners, but when those above us say you will get along and this is why, it's paid great dividends for us, and we've had $15 million in revenue from the community because of our relationships.
Well, and you just said it, and Terry and Joey said it before. If the public sees us fight, if the public sees firefighters getting locked up, if they see police officers, the whole tainted relationship on both sides, where firefighters just say, or worse yet, someone posts something without thinking on. So we just talked about the great points of social media, Kenny. Terry, one of our police sergeants was supposed to join us today. Chris Kemp is, I just love him. He's a great guy. I love him and his family. He's a sergeant, military background, also an officer with the Maybank Volunteer Fire Department, about an hour and 15 minutes southeast of Dallas, and they had one of their people make a stupid comment regarding the Charleston shootings, that tragedy where a coward did what he did in that church, and on his own page, but it reflected poorly on the whole fire department, and I mean nationally, internationally, they got stuff, and they did a very good job at attacking it right away. Chris did a great job with, our buddy Dave Statter says it all the time, when something happens, get out in front of the public as fast as you can. Get your ducks in order. Get out in front of the public as fast as you can. Investigate it, with due diligence, and then come back with a finding, and a finding based on facts, not opinion, not emotions. And they did that. They were very quick. He followed those 3 points. And Dave's an Emmy award-winning reporter from D.C. that runs Statter 911, a very big, good, great blog. And Dave's got that background. And Chris did that. Their fire department did that, and we're able to kill off a lot of the crap that other people that happened. So here you had one individual take. That's a great community with great families. They're not prejudiced about nobody. In fact, my wife Jane and I talked about moving there. We still are, getting some property. I'm not going to move where there's hate. That's a great place. They had one idiot step up and do that. And I'm a pick on Terry here. Terry, you and I, when you were a division chief over bomb and arson there, you are also I don't know if it's still that way, but that division's also that handles all the IAs, all the internal affairs investigations. And you and I used to kind of laugh and go, God, I just wish somebody would not smash into shit for like a week around here. But sometimes you just got to shake your head at the decisions people make regarding, let's just say, social media and what they put out there. And there's a guy that jeopardized the reputation of a fire department for, like, you know, bad.
Yeah, and you know, I think along those lines is you know, one of the things, and we had some recent shift meetings, and one of the things that I told the guys that I would like to see is, you know, that there's going to be a very minority, a small group in any organization that you know, it's that old analogy of the kindergarten and first grade teacher who feels like she spent all of her time dealing with 3 problem children and she let 27 fail because, you know, she didn't allocate her time correctly. And unfortunately, I think in these organizations, police and fire, it's that way too. Is that sometimes the negative overwhelms the greater good and the things that are positive that are going on. You know, one of the things I told the guys the other day, I said, listen, if you've got this guy in your fire station that's a problem, he's a problem for you, he's a problem for us, whatever. I said, listen, don't be afraid to tell him he's a problem. And I said, you know, I empower everybody in this department to number one, understand the type of people I'm talking about. But if people are allowed to act a certain way, that starts the foundation for the bigger problems, I believe. But if you're consistently turning your head, and I'm not talking about just company officers, but, you know, the senior guys around here, I mean, Chief, you know, if John Copeland sees something he doesn't like, he's going to bring it to your attention.
Got that right.
And you know what? That's the way it should be. And we should be holding ourselves accountable, and we should be holding each other accountable. And I think that if you start that at the ground level, I think that it pays some dividends later on.
Well, and we've talked about that. All 4 of us have talked about that before, where the person that gets the most work done, if everything's set up right, in the department is the senior firefighter, senior patrol officer. I said it before, Terry and Joey and Kenny, where I've seen senior patrol officers take care of that whole, like I said, I remember the apartment complex were off of Round Grove Road at a fire, and I walked up, like I said, on the police officer, I said hi, and he kind of turned his head, and I went about, I said, okay, new guy. And before I left the call, one of the, not a sergeant, but a patrol officer, one of the senior guys, came over and said, hey, Chief, I saw what happened. I went over and explained to him. I know you were in another department before. We don't do that here. We get along, and we do that. But I've said before, I think firefighters are some of the bravest people on the face of the earth. They crawl into burning buildings. We play in traffic in the middle of the night and all that, on the highway. But as brave as they are, and they truly are, they won't stand up to someone at the kitchen table on drill night that's doing something wrong and risking the reputation of the department. You mentioned John Copeland, he talked about a go-to guy, stand-up guy. You know, he's a great firefighter and a great, 20-something years in Louisville, has done a great job. Sometimes those senior guys have to step up and take it and run with it. And I'm gonna throw this out there, and Terry, we got you up. Let me start with you first. Steve Hamilton threw a question out there. Pete posted for us. How does a fire department determine, it's on our chat on the right, determine their level of involvement with law enforcement active shooter incident? You know, and that kind of goes back, Kenny, to I think a little bit what you said before with the whole prior to the meth lab incident, our involvement and everything else as to how we do that. Terry, I mean, from your end, you guys are doing a lot of training with PD. You got the mall and all the other places there, and so on and so forth. What level? You're acting fire chief right now. You've been doing this a long time. How do you determine their level of involvement? Fire, and it's an active shooter from the fire department side.
Well, let's go back to what we touched on earlier, and there's got to be some good and open dialogue, communication between the 2 agencies. So, the last thing anybody wants is to show up and not know what your role is. So you need to start talking and figure out a plan. So for our department, what we did was, this is kind of and I apologize, I don't have all of his information. I believe his name is Dr. Smith. He's from, I believe it's Fairfax County, Virginia. He's a very recognized physician up there and very involved in these types of incidents. So he's kind of developed this plan of using RTS and task force for rescue and treatment and things like that. So basically we went to his class, we heard him speak, Chief Richards, heard him speak. He was with members from the police department, so we went down there collectively, listened to him talk. He gave a lot of statistics. He was able to maybe put to bed a lot of the myths or the misunderstandings when it came to these incidents. And so we kind of, both organizations adopted what his recommendations and his response model is. And so we got trained up in it. We actually paid to have him come down here. We opened it up to every law enforcement and fire department that wanted to send anybody. It was free. He put a 6-hour class on for us and gave kind of the synopsis of what his plan is. So we determined that this was going to work for us, and now that's what we're doing. We started this back in May, and we will train all the way through August until everybody understands exactly what's expected of you, and there's no second guessing. So, you know, like everything does, it comes down to training, and it comes down to having a level of commitment of your people that are willing to take a vested interest in this program. And, you know, we've made it perfectly clear to them that this is our program, and you will have a vested interest in this. So, you know, but you know, that's where we're at, and I think that, you know, the question's a good one, but you got to knock on a door and say, hey, we need to talk, because we want to understand what your expectations of us are, what we can and can't do for you, and then, you know, what we can expect from you in return. I think that's where you start.
Well, Terry, let me ask you a favor. Would you be a good contact, or Mark, for our viewers that are watching this now, or those later on, because we get tons of hits afterwards as well, if they were looking for information on that, on the Dr. Smith?
Yeah, absolutely. They could contact myself, and it's first initial last name, so T. McGrath at cityoflouisville.com, and then Mark Richards, who's our division chief over investigations, and he's kind of our point man on this program, and that's M. Richards at cityoflouisville.com. But we can get you in touch with the gentleman that kind of put this whole thing together. He's a fantastic individual. If I understand it correctly, he actually works for the fire department. He works every Sunday at an emergency room, but he's a medical director, and so, I mean, he's a boots on the ground kind of guy, and a great presentation. And it's not a complicated program. It's easy to implement, and it is absolutely the tip of the spear, I guess, when it comes to cooperation between two agencies, because you're working step by step, hand in hand, and through this whole thing.
I think that's great, because I think a lot of people aren't sure who to get a hold of when it comes to deliver that kind of program. So that's
absolutely.
Why that was awesome. Joey, when you came down from New York, and you know, then when you were working countywide, you were dealing with multiple departments, Joe, big and small, all different. I mean, makeups and everything. You know, and I know a lot of them use the sheriffs as their law enforcement. How did you balance that when it came to involvement, maybe in an active shooter? Because I know there was times you guys had barricaded suspects, or you had people. Now they're saying an active shooter at a mall or a store or a restaurant, but you know, you had a challenge of bringing all those different departments together.
Yeah, and that was, you know, having the advantage of working with the county. I could kind of, you know, being on police and fire at the same side, being a county fire marshal, gave me some leverage to get into some of the departments that operate in the rural areas, and kind of be the voice between those two. I think it's difficult because you have a sheriff's office that has a limited number of officers and covers almost half the county is unincorporated. So you're not going to build a relationship like you would, like I have here in Little Elm, where you have a suburban fire department and police department who work together day and day. So it is a little difficult. But again, it comes down to the basics of understanding what everybody's roles are. And most of the sheriff's office has excellent training, if not all of it, and they respond pretty much in a uniform way. So even if you don't know the officers, they're pretty much disciplined in their SOPs. It's just the issue of the interaction just isn't there as you would in a suburban or urban setting. So again, just opening the pathway and keeping the talking going.
And Kenny, and before I even ask Kenny to jump in here, to our viewers, you understand, we're talking about, I was born and raised in the suburbs of Southwest, in Chicago, and in the southwest side of Chicago. You know, we're talking about actually 3 different communities here, because I'm with Terry in Louisville, that are great places to raise a family. they're great communities. We still live. My daughter went all through school. We're still here in Louisville. We love living here. Little Elm's an incredible growing area on the northeast side, if you will, of the Dallas-Fort Metroplex. And Kenny, Coeur d'Alene, for years, has been all-American city. Yet we've all seen our fair share of. I think your police chief said it best, Kenny, after Sergeant Moore's death due to that coward, that law enforcement's job is to keep the bad guys away from you and your family. And this time, the bad guy won, even if it was for a short amount of time. Took one of ours, but we're still, he had a very good way of explaining it on the news. A horrible incident, but this is a result of that they step up to take care of you and your family. You kind of explained your tactical medic end of things in Coeur d'Alene. You've got big mall shopping, everything else going on down there, the resort. A lot of potential for some idiot to come in there and take advantage of a great place. How much involvement, I guess we'll maybe talk about the same thing, but aside from your tactical medics, how much involvement do you allow, or what is your involvement in active shooter, in Coeur d'Alene?
We've taken the same route that Chief McGrath has taken, and we are working with the city of Spokane. We have a battalion chief and an officer for City PD working together, establishing a program for us. And I believe it is the same as Dr. Smith, so I think we're all kind of playing on the same sheet of music here. But we're working pretty diligently with them, and our roles and responsibility are going to be very well explained, so there will be no question about it. But we are being involved with this great new program. I think it's fantastic. First time I heard about it, I thought, are you kidding me? But when you really look at it, and the simplicity of the program is going to be amazing. And again, we come back to PD never knew that we would do this with them. So now that we look at these programs that the fire service around the country is coming together with, they're like, well, you do this with us. And we're working diligently to make sure that our roles are very well defined, and we're working in the bounds that PD wants us to do, and they have our back and we have theirs. So it's a great new program. We're pretty excited about it, to be honest with you.
Well, and with all of us, we've talked about it. We obviously know that the loss we all suffered on September 11th, that brought together, I think, a lot of different folks in different agencies, and when it came to public safety, to realize we had to work together. Katrina taught us lessons. These big incidents, if we don't learn from a tragedy on how to fix things and take care of business, then we're actually failing even worse. And I hope that answers Steve Hamilton. I hope that answered your question, buddy. Terry, did you want to go ahead? You posted on our sidebar. Do you want to go ahead and rattle off Dr. Smith's the name of the business?
Yeah, I apologize for not having that advance. Dr. Reed Smith is his name. I think I said Fairfax County. Maybe he's from Arlington, but it's up in that area, the Baltimore, the Maryland area. Dr. Reed Smith, and his program is called Tactical Emergency Casualty Care. You can Google that, and it'll have some information on it. And it's I think it's growing a lot of popularity. It's been around a while, so there's probably, if you're not involved in it or looking at it, I'm sure there's an agency close to you that probably has. So, but it's like Chief mentioned, it's a very simple program, and it's very easy to adapt to whatever environment you have.
Well, and I think one of the things that we always deal with, as well as you guys said earlier, that when the public looks at the firefighter, they're like, oh wow, there's our firefighter. Look at a police officer. When you pull up, let's say no lights, no sirens, when you come up behind them in their car with your fire engine, your ambulance, they don't think twice. When they have a patrol car behind them, they get nervous. What's he or she looking at? All this stuff. And I remember that was a big adjustment for me. That's one of the reasons I pushed on the fire side, was I just didn't like working where people didn't like me for no reason. I think that's a hard thing to get past. I remember Assistant Chief Galler, Terry, 42 years with Louisville, I think.
Right.
Great guy, great leader. I remember we had that van on 121 before it was a toll road, failed to yield, turned off of Rockbrook or whatever, got hit, killed a couple kids, killed a mom, and he came in that Sunday. It was Sunday. He came in at muster, a shift change. He did that repeatedly, and he took like 5 minutes. He said, look, I'm going to tell you right now, the next time someone's yelling at you, screaming at you, saying hateful things about you because you're going to write them a ticket for whatever, you stop them for a violation, but you're going to write them or warn them, I want you to think what would have happened if we could have got to that family, you know, a couple of minutes before that all happened, if we could have stopped them or whatever from making that turn, or got it, you know, that whole thing that's what we're about. People look at traffic tickets, they look at all that stuff as they're being picked on, where I said it earlier, we got the same mission, just two different avenues to get there when it comes to protecting people. So, but you know, hey, we have 5 minutes, guys, and I guess what I want to do is just kind of run around the table here, our group, our Humpday group, Hangout group. Kenny, let's start with you. One more time, let's wrap it up here and ask each one of you for some advice from you. Let's talk to the firefighters right now, Chief Gabriel. Tell them what you need them to know and what they need to do to get along and support. Let's talk about support those in law enforcement.
Well, you know, the history has been that we're two different complete animals. The PD does their thing. They usually do it by themselves. We do our thing. We always do them as teams, and that's changing with the ICS system in the country. And we're not that far apart. We're not that different, and we are one family, and we are stronger together. And education is a key for sure, but just know that they're there to do their job, we're here to do our job, and at the end, we're all doing the job together. Perfect.
Kenny, if someone wanted to get a hold of you, I always do this. I know you lecture, you know, you do classes, you've done a ton of things, but whether it's to have come out and teach or just to pick your brain, chief to chief, or if somebody had a question for you, how's the best way for them to get a hold of you? Is it email?
Yeah, my email is kgabriel, Gabriel, at cdaid.org, and I'm available anytime.
And a little shameless plug here, but if you're looking for a place to go on vacation, wintertime or summertime, oh my God, that's one of the best kept secrets. You guys used to tell me all the time to quit talking about it because everybody was coming up there, but Google it. North Idaho, I remember when my former boss down in Barron went there with her husband at the time. She said, we'll never go back to Tahoe. We love Coeur d'Alene so much. You know, or Hawaii, that they made several trips out of it. So, great place to come out there and spend some time with your family.
Yes.
You know, Joe, ending statement for our listeners.
No, appreciate the time. I think people, certainly managers, leaders, chiefs out there, have to put some of the personal feelings or maybe egos aside, and it should be a common goal. It should be the safety of our responders and the safety of our patients should be first and paramount. So, thank you.
And Joey, if they want to get a hold of you, our newly promoted Assistant Town Manager / Director of Public Safety in Little Elm, Texas, how can they do it?
It's the letter J, Florentino, at littleelm.org.
Perfect. And folks, if you have any, I know a lot of you know how to get a hold of me. If for some reason you type a letter in wrong or something, get a hold of me. I'll give you their information. Terry, looking at you, buddy. Advice, we've been doing a great job with it. Advice for those out there to make things work between police and fire.
Well, to keep it really simple, and something that you've said a lot, and Battalion Chief Jerry Wells says a lot, is first of all, you know what, be nice. This is public service, and the fire department's not the only public service we have around here. And I tell our guys sometimes, I said, be careful, don't overestimate what your value is or what your perceived value is in the community, because if you went up and down the street and took a poll and said, would you guys like running water to take baths in and cook, or do you want firemen? I go, you have to understand that there's a lot of moving parts to making this community a good community, and we have to understand that we're part of that whole wheel, and you have to understand and that everybody has a job to do just like we do. And the more you understand about what other people need to do or what their jobs are, I guarantee it makes the whole thing run a lot easier. So I encourage our guys to take a few minutes, talk to some people, talk to the officers, ask them questions, just kind of get involved in what they do and get an understanding of it, and just extend some cooperation and don't ever be afraid to ask for their help. And that's another thing. I think firefighters, like police officers, are a very prideful bunch, and we'll solve our own problem kind of mentality. But sometimes you can knock on the door, you go over there and say, I got a question, and dialogue is a great way to start.
Perfect. Thanks, Terry. And Terry mentioned already, Team McGrath at citylouisville.com. you get a hold of Terry or any of our guys. We had some great guests. Guys, thank you so much. I can't thank you enough for coming on board. So we got a bunch of people watching. We got a bunch of people that'll watch it later. For our viewers, if you're looking to get a hold of me, prideandownership.com, probably the best way. It's got all my contact info, prideandownership.com. With that, I want to thank everybody for joining us, especially our special guests with today's live Humpday Hangout with Fire Engineering. As always, we want you to keep the men and women serving armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. Never forgetting means never forgetting, and we're thinking of you. We're thinking of you all the time, Chief Tim Tittle, and we want you to be back. Like Terry said, the seat's warm, and you'll be back there soon. So we never end any of our shows, our programs, our classes without two very important words, and that's be safe. God bless you. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.